This week on Fantasy Football Reporters, we have the week in review, we have the Bonehead Play, we have predictions for Week 6, Beasts and Busts, and we have an injury update. So, this past week, we had our contest winner here for Week 5 Stat Challenge, Greg Jacobs of Uxbridge, Massachusetts. Congratulations. You won the Dustin Keller game-used jersey card and the Matt Stafford, Mark Sanchez rookie card. Both of these are rookie cards, actually. This has the game-used jersey. He guessed the lowest number of Dustin Keller, who actually had a pretty bad week overall. Pass it to Sean to talk about Week 6 Stat Challenge.
All right, this week the giveaway is going to be a Chris Johnson rookie card. Zoom in on that, baby. It's a nice card. You're going to have to guess how many rushes he'll have, how many rushing yards he'll have, and how many rushing touchdowns he'll have. And go to the site for details on the rules for that game. All right, so first we're gonna move on to the Bonehead Play of the Week we have, and this week it's gonna be Brett Favre. To start off the video, he misses a wide open Percy Harvin in the middle of the field, which would have definitely been a first down, but that actually wasn't the Bonehead Play of the Week. I just threw that in there. With a minute and change to go, he throws an interception to end the game. And live in studio, we have Brett Favre.
Hey, how are you?
Brett, what happened on this play?
I don't know. I'm just, I'm comfortable in my Wrangler jeans, and I'm comfortable throwing pick sixes at the end of the game. I just felt like it was a good thing to do.
You seem to do that a lot.
Yeah, I'm pretty good.
Okay. Brett, moving on to more important things. What's your response to the allegations that you sent naked text pictures of your penis to Jen Sturgeon?
You never close your eyes anymore when I kiss your lips.
Dude, what the
Tenderness.
Alright.
Like before.
Alright, good.
In your fingertips.
Brett, I got a stat for you. The past 5 seasons, the last pass of the year that you have thrown, 4 of them have gone to defenders. What do you have to say to that?
Nah, I like the other team.
Alright, Brett, thanks for joining us for the Bonehead Play of the Week. And, actually, I got a text. Brett, the text is from you. Dude, what the hell?
You love it.
I don't love it.
That's awesome.
I don't love it. I don't need those pictures.
Send it to everybody.
We're moving on.
Wrangler jeans.
Terrible, I hate it. Here's your Week 5 in review. So we're going to start with quarterbacks. Phillip Rivers throws for 431 yards, 2 touchdowns against Oakland. And I guess Nnamdi Asomugha, I don't know, was nowhere to be found in that game. Romo throws for 406 yards, 3 touchdowns, though he did have 3 interceptions against the Titans. Donovan McNabb, 357 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He beat the Packers in overtime. And Kyle Orton again throws for over 300 yards, and he has 2 touchdowns, but the Broncos still lose in a tough one. Sean Hill, who we told you to pick up last week if you needed a quarterback, only 227 yards, but he did have the 3 touchdowns. Moving on to running backs, Matt Forte finally breaks out against Carolina. He has 166 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. Frank, what do you make of his performance? I mean, is it something that we can expect to see more of, or is it kind of a fluke?
I think he's better catching the ball than running the ball this year. He had the first game of the year. I think he had like 40-something points in fantasy.
Yeah.
He's a good player. We expect him to do well all season long.
Yeah. And another one from the finally department, Ray Rice rushes for 133 yards and 2 touchdowns against Denver. Chris Johnson against Dallas runs for 131 yards and 2 touchdowns, no surprise there. Michael Bush, filling in for an injured Darren McFadden, goes for 104 yards and a score, and that's 31 receptions to his day, or it's 31 receiving yards, on his day with 3 receptions. LaShawn McCoy doesn't break the all-important 100-yard mark, but he does have a touchdown, and he also has 5 receptions for 46 yards. Moving on to wideouts, my boy, my preseason sleeper, Malcolm Flores, says Nnamdi Asomugha and goes off on Oakland for 213 yards and a touchdown. Miles Austin goes for 166 yards and a touchdown in a loss to Tennessee. Hakeem Nicks has 12 receptions, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Frank, out of all the Giants wide receivers, is Hakeem Nicks the one that you trust the most, or what do you make of that situation?
I hate you, Steve Smith, but yeah, I drafted Steve Smith ahead of Nicks, and Nicks has been unbelievable. Manningham had a really tough week, 0 catches for 0 yards and 0 points. So yeah, Nicks is by far their best receiver at this point.
Nicks from here on out, it looks like.
Absolutely.
Brandon Lloyd, Orton keeps slinging it around, and Lloyd is loving it. He goes for 135 yards and 2 touchdowns. Percy Harvin has the old man throwing to him, and he picks up 97 yards, and he gets his 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Tight ends, really quick. Vernon Davis, the only tight end to break the 100-yard mark, and he did have a touchdown. Mercedes Lewis gets 2 touchdowns to go with his 54 yards. And Antonio Gates, Frank, when you drafted this guy, did you think he was going to do this good? Over 100 points so far in most leagues, and he leads the NFL in touchdowns with 7.
I took him about a round earlier than most on average take him. I thought he would have a big year, mainly because Vincent Jackson is crying someplace and not playing.
On his couch.
Yeah, doing something stupid. So yeah, I did think Antonio Gates was going to have a really good year, and I can, we've been saying it all year long since our very first show that Gates and Rivers are going to be great all year long.
Huge year he's having. Real quick on the defenses, 2 defenses that are barely owned in leagues. Oakland had 3 sacks, 1 safety, 3 fumble recoveries, 2 touchdowns, and 2 block kicks. Wow. And that's against an offense in San Diego, which is pretty decent. Arizona, again, and Oakland's owned in 3% of leagues, so, take a look at them. Arizona, 14% owned. They had a sack, 3 picks, 1 fumble recovery, and 2 touchdowns.
And that's against New Orleans.
And that's against New Orleans, which is a good defense, good offense, excuse me.
Yep.
As for kickers, the 2 highlights, Josh Scobie and Nick Folk both banged 5 field goals through the uprights, and they both had over 20 points.
I might add that Detroit in 3rd place was actually the 3rd highest point getter for fantasy football this week. So you had Oakland, Arizona, and Detroit, 3 of probably the worst and least owned defenses that you could imagine, being the top 3 defenses this past week. So that's a very good point, Sean.
Exactly. Now we're moving on to the Week 5 bust. Frank?
Arian Foster, my man, who's been great all season, who was number 1 overall in most leagues coming into this week, had 11 rushes for 25 yards. He did absolutely nothing. Greg Jennings continues to not impress anybody. He had 2 catches for 22 yards. He has not been worthy of his draft position, and he's been terrible this year. Donald Driver has actually been a lot better. But we expect Jennings to do a little bit better now that Jermichael Finley's been injured, and he's going to be out for a considerable amount of time. Matt Schaub, again, 196 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 fumble lost, not a good week. Jimmy Clausen, if for some reason you started Jimmy Clausen, you did something very wrong in your draft. But he did terrible. We kind of know why he fell to the 2nd round now. Good job St. Louis taking Sam Bradford and not Jimmy Clausen with that 1st overall pick. 9 completions in the entire game for 61 yards. And on the other side of the ball, if you can imagine, it actually gets worse. Todd Collins, who is like the ageless wonder, it seems like, him and Brett Favre hang out together back in the 1940s and 60s. Back in the high school, the glory days, I guess you could say. Todd Collins had 32 passing yards on 6 completions to his team. And he actually had 4 completions to the other team, also known as interceptions. So Todd Collins, and if for some reason you started Todd Collins, you did something very wrong, and you're probably the worst fantasy football
manager.
manager.
Last place for
him. He's you're the worst fantasy football manager that's ever been known to man. A couple other guys, Anquan Bolden, Tim Hightower, and as we already talked about, Mario Manningham. Very, very piss-poor days in Week 5. I want to pass it back to Sean for some injury updates.
Lots of injuries this week. Real quick, though, on Michael Vick. He resumed throwing today at practice Wednesday. He can't be ruled out of the game for this Sunday, and you know he'd want to be in there against Atlanta, his former team. So make sure you watch his status throughout the week. He may play this Sunday, but it's 50-50 at this point. Ryan Matthews did not practice Wednesday, and it looks like his high ankle sprain, is still bothering him. Ray Rice didn't practice Wednesday, but he was listed last week with the same injury on the injury report, so and he had his best game of the year. So not too much to worry about Ray, but watch him. Darren McFadden was on the field Wednesday for practice after being inactive last week against San Diego, so that's good news for owners. And news on Reggie Bush. He hopes to be back by week 7 or 8 at the latest, so that's good news for owners who held him on their roster, held a spot for him on their roster. It looks like he's going to be back week 7, maybe week 8. Calvin Johnson. Owners got a scare this week as Megatron got some MRIs done on his shoulder. He said he landed awkwardly on it in the 4th quarter of last week's game. He didn't practice today. He did practice today, but he was limited. So you want to check his status Sunday before the game. Make sure he's good to go. Aaron Rodgers may not get in the game this week, and we won't know for sure until Thursday when he has concussion tests again. It's going to be tough for him to play this week. He got hit pretty hard several times on Sunday, and concussions, again, are tough this year. They're really being cautious with them, so you want to check his status, Aaron Rodgers, throughout the week. And right now, I'm going to pass it back to Frank for the Beast and Bust predictions, Week 6.
Some Week 6 predictions. We have Matt Forte against Seattle. Phillip Rivers and Antonio Gaines against St. Louis. They gave up 44 points to Detroit Lions this past week.
Whoops.
Big Ben in his return to Cleveland. And actually, Hines Ward and Mike Wallace should expect to actually get some balls thrown their way. And they should all have big weeks. And Arian Foster against Kansas City, we expect him to be pretty good as well this week. As for Bust, we have Javid Best versus the Giants. The Giants have looked pretty good as of late, Sean. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, their defense, especially their run defense, is looking real solid this year. And Javid Best, I mean, he hasn't rushed for a good yards per carry, but he has got a lot of touchdowns. But it's going to be tough for him this week, to say the least.
Right. Sam Bradford against San Diego. San Diego's defense has been great all year, and Bradford looked terrible against Detroit. Peyton Hillis versus Pittsburgh, although they just made a trade to get Mike Bell today. Jerome Harrison got moved to Philadelphia. And Brandon Lloyd going up against Darrelle Revis. We expect him to slow down a little bit. He's been on a tear, him and Kyle Orton. And then we got Crabtree versus Nandi Ashmawa, who actually had a really bad week last week against Malcolm Floyd. That's our predictions for Week 6. Keep checking back on the site and fantasyfootballreporters.com. We've got the new weekly stat challenge. Make sure you enter that. And we also have the new question of the week up. It has to do with tight ends this week.
You stay classy, Jen Sturger.